Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift into the quiet world of hibernation, a place where life slows almost to a stop. Beneath snow and soil, within bark and stone, hearts grow quiet and the earth holds its breath. The world seems frozen in silence, yet beneath that calm, life continues in secret. Hibernation is nature's hidden art of survival. It is the science of waiting, conserving, and trusting that warmth will return. Frogs freeze solid, but return to life. Bears sleep for months without food or water. And tiny mammals, that their hearts come to an almost total standstill. Scientists now search for ways to bring this power into our own lives. Hibernation might protect astronauts, preserve organs, or slow the rhythm of aging itself. What began as a winter strategy may hold the key to our future. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Allow your eyes to grow heavy, and let the hush of winter cradle your thoughts. Let's begin. Frogs can freeze solid and come back to life with the spring thaw. When the cold arrives, the wood frog performs one of nature's most astonishing transformations. As ice begins to spread through its body, its heart stops completely. Breathing ceases, blood freezes, and every visible sign of life disappears. But moments before this happens, the frog's liver floods its bloodstream with glucose and urea, saturating every cell. This mixture acts like a biological antifreeze, keeping delicate tissues from being torn apart by forming ice. For the entire winter, the frog remains frozen stiff, its cells locked in suspended animation. When the temperature finally rises, the ice within its body melts in careful order. The heart begins to pulse, the lungs draw breath, and within hours the frog hops away as if nothing happened. No machine can yet copy this perfect pause between life and death. It is living biology mastering the art of controlled freezing. Hibernation slows aging by reducing cellular damage over time. Every heartbeat, every chemical reaction in a living cell leaves a trace of wear. Oxygen keeps us alive, but also creates unstable molecules that damage DNA, proteins, and membranes. In hibernation, metabolism slows so dramatically that this internal weather almost stops. Cells shift from production to repair, using energy not to build, but to mend. Waste removal improves, oxidation drops, and proteins last longer before they must be replaced. Even the brain, resting in deep torpor, clears away accumulated toxins more efficiently than during normal sleep. Studies show that animals that hibernate often live significantly longer than similar species that stay active all year. Their bodies age in slow motion, protected by the chemistry of stillness. Each season of rest becomes a quiet renewal, proving that sometimes the best way to survive time is simply to let it pass more slowly. Bears hibernate for months, yet wake with muscles fully intact. While humans confined to bed lose strength rapidly, bears manage to stay still for up to half a year without wasting away. Inside the den, heart rate drops to a handful of beats per minute, and breathing slows almost to nothing. Yet the bear's muscles stay dense and strong. Its body recycles nitrogen from waste and converts it into new protein, feeding muscle fibers even without food. Hormones maintain bone density, preventing brittleness that would plague any other mammal in such stillness. Low-level tremors in the limbs keep circulation active enough to nourish every cell. When spring sunlight filters through the den, the bear rises immediately, walking with full strength as if it had never slept. Researchers hope to one day adapt this natural miracle to human medicine, allowing patients to recover from long immobilization without losing the very strength that keeps them alive. Bats slow their heartbeat from hundreds per minute to almost none. A bat's metabolism is designed for extremes. In flight, its heart can beat faster than any mammal its size, pumping hundreds of times per minute. But when winter arrives and insects vanish, it enters torpor so deep that its heart may pause for minutes at a time. Blood flow nearly stops, temperature drops to match the cave around it, and oxygen use falls to a fraction of normal. The bat becomes a small, living ember of energy, burning just enough to endure. Periodically, it stirs, raises its temperature, and checks the air before slipping back into stillness. The control is absolute, balancing on the edge between life and death. By surviving months in this state, bats conserve enough energy to outlast famine. Their bodies show that endurance is not always about speed or strength, but about knowing exactly when to be still. Arctic ground squirrels let their brains drop below freezing without harm. In the northern tundra, temperatures can fall so low that even the air itself crackles. The Arctic ground squirrel survives it by letting its body become colder than ice. Deep underground, it curls into a ball, its core temperature falling several degrees below zero. Remarkably, ice never forms inside its cells. Special proteins protect membranes, and high concentrations of glucose act as cryoprotectants. During this time, its brain shows no measurable electrical activity. Its heart slows to almost nothing, and yet it remains alive. Several times each winter, it briefly warms itself back to normal, then slips again into its frozen trance. This rhythm of freeze and thaw prevents cellular stress from building up and keeps the body ready for revival. Scientists study this creature as a living key to medical cryopreservation because it demonstrates that the boundary between frozen and alive is not as absolute as once believed. Painted turtles survive winter without taking a breath. In frozen ponds across North America, painted turtles sleep buried in mud for months under thick ice. Oxygen cannot reach them, yet they remain alive. Their metabolism slows to such an extent that breathing becomes unnecessary. Instead, they rely on chemical reactions that produce energy without oxygen. These reactions generate acid, which would normally destroy tissue, but the turtle's shell absorbs it like a sponge. Calcium compounds within the shell neutralize the acid, keeping the blood balanced. Heartbeats slow to once or twice each minute, and nerve activity almost stops. When the thaw arrives, oxygen returns, and the turtles revive within hours, perfectly unharmed. Their biology offers clues for protecting human tissues when blood flow is interrupted. They prove that life can endure without breath, not through magic, but through quiet chemistry, affected by millions of winters. Scientists are studying torpor to help protect astronauts in deep space. Spaceflight is one of humanity's most extreme frontiers, but the human body is not built for it. Long missions require food, oxygen, and protection from radiation. Hibernation could solve all three. By studying animals that enter torpor, researchers are learning how to safely slow human metabolism. In theory, a person in torpor would need only minimal resources and would be less vulnerable to radiation damage because slower cells suffer fewer mutations. Experiments with mammals have already shown that induced hibernation can be triggered with cooling and targeted brain stimulation. NASA is exploring this idea for future missions to Mars and beyond, imagining crews that rest for months while machines handle the journey. The body would be cooled, heart rate slowed, and oxygen use minimized, just like a hibernating animal. It is a vision where the science of survival on Earth could one day carry us through the stars. Hibernation shuts down immunity and restarts it without harm. Most living things depend on constant immune defense, but hibernators switch theirs off entirely and somehow restart it flawlessly. As temperature drops, white blood cells vanish from circulation, retreating into organs where they remain dormant. Inflammation stops. The immune system becomes almost silent, conserving energy while food is scarce. When spring warmth arrives, it restarts perfectly, without confusion or overreaction. There is no lingering inflammation, no infection waiting in ambush. The process functions like a clean reboot of the body's defense network. Researchers believe that this precise control could transform human medicine, especially in organ transplants or autoimmune diseases. Understanding how hibernators pause and reset immunity may teach us how to rest the human immune system without harm, offering new ways to heal by mimicking the calm intelligence of winter itself. Dormice sleep through more than half the year in hidden burrows. For dormice, the year is divided sharply between abundance and absence. During the warm months, they feed tirelessly, building fat reserves that will sustain them for the long sleep to come. As the air cools, they curl into nests lined with moss and leaves deep underground. Heart rate falls, breathing nearly stops, and their temperature matches the surrounding soil. They can remain like this for 6 months or longer, waking only when the scent of spring reaches the surface. The name dormouse itself comes from the Latin word for sleep, a fitting title for a creature whose life depends on perfect timing. They sleep through winter storms, predators, and hunger, trusting that patience will preserve them. When they emerge, they are not weakened, only ready. Their secret is simple. They survive not by fighting the seasons, but by flowing with them. Hummingbirds enter nightly torpor to survive the chill. When twilight cools the air, a hummingbird faces a brutal math problem. Its engine runs so hot that a few cold hours could drain every calorie it gathered that day. The solution is torpor, a controlled shutdown that can drop body temperature by more than 20 degrees and cut energy use to a tiny fraction. Perched on a twig, it loosens its grip into a locking tendon so it will not fall, folds its feathers tight to limit heat loss, and lets the world go dim. Heartbeats that roared during flight slow to a gentle pulse, and breathing settles into long, quiet intervals. Just before dawn, a tiny furnace of brown fat ignites along the shoulders and neck, warming blood that rushes to the brain and muscles. Within minutes, the bird lifts off, bright as a spark. Each night is a narrow escape, solved by precision rather than size. Hibernators lose almost no muscle, despite total immobility. A season without movement should waste tissue, yet true hibernators hold their strength as if time barely passed. Deep inside, protein recycling is rewritten. Instead of discarding nitrogen in urea, the body reclaims it to build new amino acids. Muscle fibers retain their structure because enzymes that break protein are dialed down, while enzymes that rebuild are kept humming at a baseline. Nerves maintain their connections, and periodic microshivers keep blood and nutrients flowing without spending much fuel. Even mitochondria adapt, shifting toward efficiency that preserves fibers under low oxygen and low temperature. Studies in ground squirrels and bears show intact cross-sectional area and contractile power after months of stillness. The insight is powerful. Weakness after bed rest is not inevitable. Biology already contains a blueprint for preserving tissue through long pauses, a plan written in careful balances rather than brute activity. Desert toads sleep underground for years waiting for rain. In landscapes where seasons are defined by thirst, survival depends on patience. Spadefoot and other desert toads burrow deep, when the soil begins to crack. They shed layers of skin into a waterproof envelope, slow their heartbeat to a whisper, and rely on fat reserves measured not in days, but in years. Their bodies conserve water so completely that they can endure droughts that erase ponds and harden riverbeds. They listen for low-frequency rumbles that signal distant storms. When thunder finally touches the ground above, they wake quickly, climb into floodlit puddles, and call in choruses that can fill a new pond with eggs in a single night. Tadpoles race through development before the sun can erase their nurseries. This is hibernation tuned to dryness rather than cold, proof that torpor is not a winter story, but a survival language that deserts teach fluently. Brain activity nearly vanishes, yet remains able to sense danger. During torpor, the brain retreats to a minimal mode that saves energy while guarding the gates. Large-scale rhythms shrink, synapses temporarily disconnect, and neurotransmitters drop to quiet levels. Yet specific circuits stay responsive to critical cues like the smell of a predator, a rise in carbon dioxide, or a sudden vibration. This selective vigilance keeps an animal safe without paying the full cost of wakefulness. When a threat appears, a cascade restores temperature and blood flow to essential regions first, bringing awareness back in a controlled sequence. Memory survives because synapses are protected by special proteins that stabilize them during the cold phase, then guide reconnection during the warm phase. The result is remarkable. A brain can dim almost to darkness, but it leaves a pilot light burning, ready to relight perception in seconds if the world demands it. Bumblebee queens hibernate alone beneath the soil all winter. After summer colonies collapse, a single newly mated queen becomes the entire future of the hive. She digs into cool earth, curls her legs beneath her, and lets her body slip into deep torpor. Stored sugars and fats ration out slowly. Her spiracles close tightly to conserve moisture, and her muscles remain ready for the first warm day. Frost passes through the soil above her, and predators move overhead. But she holds still. When spring arrives, she climbs into weak sunlight and immediately scouts for a nest site, often a small hole left by a mouse. She forages alone, warms her flight muscles with buzzing heat, and lays the first brood that will become workers. From that lonely winter sleep, an entire city of bees rises. The strategy is risky, but it allows the species to bridge the gap between seasons with a single living thread. Bears give birth during hibernation without ever waking fully. Deep in the den, while snow seals the entrance, a pregnant bear shifts from energy conservation to a precise developmental schedule. Her cubs arrive tiny and nearly hairless, each the size of a small fruit. She remains in a torpid state, yet the nerves that control nursing and maternal responses are fully active. Milk production begins without the normal demands of high food intake because her body reroutes stored fat into rich calories. The den stays warm enough from her metabolism and the insulation of bedding to keep the cubs safe. For weeks, they nurse and grow while she barely moves. When the den opens, the infants are transformed, now strong enough to cling and follow. This pairing of dormancy with reproduction is a masterclass in budgeted energy. The mother spends almost nothing on movement, but everything on growth, and the result is new life carried through winter on a quiet tide. Artificial torpor may reduce radiation damage during space travel. Radiation is a constant hazard beyond Earth's magnetic shield. Fast-moving particles can slice through tissues and disrupt DNA. One promising idea is to slow the body so that vulnerable processes happen less often and repair systems have more time to work. In laboratory studies, induced torpor has been linked to reduced oxidative stress and calmer inflammatory responses, both of which can amplify radiation harm when uncontrolled. Cooling the body and lowering metabolism could also shrink the size of life support systems, freeing mass for shielding where it matters most. Engineers imagine habitats that guide crews through safe cycles of torpor and waking checks, aligning sleep periods with solar storms when activity is most dangerous. The path from animal models to human protocols will require careful steps, but the concept is elegant. Survival in space might begin with learning to be still at the right moments. Some animals stockpile fat that can produce heat directly. Not all fat is merely storage. Brown adipose tissue is a specialized heater packed with mitochondria and a protein that allows energy to be released as warmth rather than captured as chemical fuel. Hibernators build and position this tissue with precision around the spine, neck, and shoulders, where warm blood can quickly reach the heart and brain during arousal. When a sleeping body needs to wake, hormones ignite brown fat, flooding nearby vessels with heat that spreads through the core. This system works without shivering and without the high oxygen demands of muscle contractions, an advantage when air is scarce and time is short. Infants of many mammals carry brown fat for the same reason, bridging the vulnerable hours after birth. The design is simple and brilliant. Store energy as white fat for the long haul, and keep a separate furnace of brown fat for the instant spark. Evolution invented hibernation many times across unrelated species. From frogs and ground squirrels to insects and fish, dormancy strategies appear on distant branches of the tree of life. That repeated emergence suggests powerful advantages whenever environments swing between feast and famine. In each lineage, evolution solves the same core problems with different tools. Amphibians lean on sugar-based cryoprotection, mammals refine hormonal control and protein recycling, insects orchestrate diapause by pausing development altogether. The common thread is the ability to reduce demand when supply vanishes, then restart in a controlled way when conditions improve. This convergence is a map of nature's priorities. It shows that selection can favor patience as strongly as it favors speed, and that pausing life's processes can be as sophisticated as accelerating them. Hibernation is not a single trick. It is a family of solutions that keeps reappearing wherever climate cycles set the rules. Lemurs in Madagascar are the only primates that truly hibernate. High in the spiny forests of Madagascar, fat-tailed dwarf lemurs prepare for the dry season, not with migration or stored food, but with deep hibernation. They gorge on fruit until their tails swell with fat reserves, then retreat into hollow trees. Inside, their heart rate slows from more than 100 beats per minute to barely 6, and breathing may pause for minutes at a time. Their body temperature drifts with the air, sometimes dropping close to ambient. For as long as 7 months, they remain hidden, surviving entirely on stored energy. Every few days, they stir briefly to adjust position before falling back into stillness. No other primate on Earth does this. The discovery reshaped what scientists believed about the limits of mammalian adaptation and even suggested that the ancestors of humans might once have held a similar ability. It is a reminder that deep rest and complex consciousness need not be opposites. Hibernation suppresses pain signals throughout the body. When an animal enters torpor, the same cold that slows its heartbeat also changes how nerves carry information. Pain receptors become less responsive, and signals that would normally trigger discomfort are muted or never reach the brain. Experiments with hibernating ground squirrels show that even severe injuries cause little or no immediate reaction during the deep phase. Chemicals that drive inflammation are also reduced, keeping swelling and tissue damage low. This suppression helps the body conserve energy and avoid wasting resources on sensations that would serve no purpose while immobile. It also allows healing to proceed quietly in the background. For medicine, this natural anesthesia holds enormous promise. If humans could mimic hibernation's control of pain without losing consciousness, surgery and trauma care could be revolutionized. The idea that cold silence might carry its own form of relief gives new meaning to the phrase, rest and recover. Garter snakes crowd together in huge underground dens for warmth. In the frozen north, garter snakes face winters too harsh for solitary survival. Their solution is community. As temperatures fall, hundreds or even thousands of snakes slither into ancient limestone cracks and burrows that extend deep enough to stay above freezing. They coil tightly in layers, their bodies touching, their heat pooled in a shared pocket of air. The den breathes slowly through narrow openings, keeping oxygen levels just sufficient for survival. Each snake lowers its metabolism until a single breath may last minutes. For months, they remain in this living braid, conserving what little warmth the earth offers. When spring sunlight penetrates the stones, the mass begins to stir, scales rubbing softly together in a sound like rustling leaves. They emerge in waves, spreading across fields and ponds to feed and mate. It is an extraordinary display of cooperation in creatures often imagined as solitary, a testament to how even cold-blooded lives depend on connection. Certain enzymes only function at near-freezing temperatures. Some animals and microbes that thrive in cold environments carry a molecular toolkit built for chill. Their enzymes, the biological machines that drive chemical reactions, work best when most others would grind to a halt. In these psychrophilic organisms, the enzymes are unusually flexible, allowing them to move and bind molecules despite the thickened consistency of cold cytoplasm. This comes at a cost. At higher temperatures, they can unfold and fail. Yet in ice and permafrost, they are perfect. Fish, for instance, produce cold active enzymes that keep digestion running even when seawater dips below zero, while Arctic bacteria use similar chemistry to recycle nutrients trapped in frozen soils. Studying these proteins has revealed new ways to design industrial processes that operate without heat, saving energy and reducing waste. Life, it turns out, does not merely endure cold, it can tailor its very machinery to thrive in it. Painted turtles switch to anaerobic metabolism when trapped under ice. When winter locks ponds beneath a solid sheet of ice, painted turtles settle into the muddy bottom, unable to surface for air. Instead of suffocating, they switch to a backup system. Their metabolism slows until energy use is minimal, and cells draw power without oxygen, relying on stored sugars. This anaerobic state produces lactic acid, which would be deadly if it built up unchecked. The turtle's skeleton solves that problem by absorbing acid and releasing calcium carbonate to neutralize it. Their shells literally act as chemical buffers that keep blood chemistry stable for months. When spring sunlight melts the ice, the turtles awaken slowly, resume breathing, and expel the excess acid as carbon dioxide. It is one of the most astonishing adaptations in vertebrates, proof that survival can depend on chemistry as much as endurance, and that even a shell can serve as both armor and life support system. The pineal gland tells animals when to begin their winter rest. Deep in the brain, the pineal gland reads the language of light. As days grow shorter, it releases melatonin in longer nightly bursts, signaling that the season is shifting. This hormone acts like a calendar for the body, coordinating the cascade of changes that lead to hibernation, slower metabolism, altered appetite, and the conversion of white fat into the brown kind that doubly generates heat. In some species, the pineal gland even communicates with genes that adjust circadian rhythm, rewiring daily cycles into seasonal ones. If the light pattern changes suddenly, such as from artificial illumination, hibernation may be delayed or disrupted. This sensitivity links the ancient biology of survival to the simplest rhythm on Earth, day and night. Every flicker of dawn and dusk is a message, and the pineal gland is its translator, whispering to the body that it is time to sleep, to wake, or to wait a little longer. Long sleepers tend to live longer because of reduced metabolic stress. In animals that hibernate or enter torpor regularly, there is growing evidence that longevity follows. Each pause reduces the total wear inflicted by constant metabolism. During torpor, oxygen demand falls, free radicals decline, and enzymes that repair DNA have more time to work unopposed. Organs that would otherwise age through continuous operation rest, like machines shut down between shifts. Even telomeres, the fragile caps at the ends of chromosomes, seem to erode more slowly in species that experience seasonal dormancy. When compared with their active relatives, hibernators often live years longer despite similar body size and diet. The lesson reaches beyond biology. Slowing down extends not just life, but quality of function. Time does not only pass through movement, it also gathers in moments of stillness. Nature's longest-lived creatures may owe their years not to strength, but to the art of measured silence. Fossil burrows suggest some ancient reptiles hibernated underground. In the rock layers of the Karoo Basin and other fossil-rich regions, paleontologists have discovered coiled skeletons inside preserved tunnels. These ancient burrows date back more than 200 million years, and the postures of the occupants, tucked limbs, curled tails, and resting heads, suggest dormancy. Traces of soil chemistry and microscopic features confirm that these reptiles sealed themselves in during harsh droughts or cold seasons, waiting for better conditions. Their modern descendants, like certain lizards and crocodilians, still use similar strategies, hinting that hibernation-like behavior has deep evolutionary roots. These fossils expand the story of torpor far beyond mammals, showing that even in the Triassic world, when dinosaurs were just beginning to emerge, some creatures had already mastered the secret of sleeping through hardship. Hibernation is not a new invention. It is an ancient rhythm, older than mammals, older than flowering plants, and written into the bones of time itself. Cryogenic sleep might one day carry humans between the stars. For now, the idea lives in science fiction, but every discovery about torpor brings it closer to reality. If metabolism could be safely slowed for weeks, months, or even years, interplanetary voyages could be undertaken without vast stores of food or constant life support. Medical researchers have already induced short hibernation-like states in rodents and observed protective effects against injury. The challenge lies in scaling that precision to humans without damaging organs or cognition. Space agencies imagine cryosleep pods that lower temperature and metabolic rate under careful control, with automated systems that periodically wake crew members for monitoring. Beyond exploration, the same technology could transform medicine on Earth, allowing patients to be stabilized for transport or stored between procedures. It would make the boundary between sleep and survival blur into something entirely new, a pause long enough to cross the gulf between worlds. Every spring brings billions of awakenings hidden from sight. When the thaw begins, an entire planet exhales. Beneath melting snow, frogs stir from their icy tombs. Insects crack open soil chambers, and mammals rouse from dens to the thin light of dawn. Microbes reawaken in wet earth, restarting the chemistry that will feed roots and leaves. Rivers swell, carrying nutrients released by decomposition, and the first shoots of green answer the call. This mass awakening is not a single event but a wave that travels north with the warming sun, reanimating ecosystems in sequence. By midsummer, the pulse of life reaches the Arctic, completing a circuit that began months earlier near the equator. For every heartbeat that slowed in winter, another now returns. The scale is almost impossible to imagine. Billions of tiny revivals adding up to one planetary rhythm. Hibernation does not end with a single animal's yawn. It ends with the Earth itself taking a breath. Hedgehogs cool their bodies until they almost match the air around them. As the light fades from autumn fields, hedgehogs vanish beneath drifts of leaves and moss. They curl into perfect balls, noses tucked against bellies, spines pressed outward like armor. Inside their nests, the temperature slowly falls until their bodies cool to nearly match the air around them. Heartbeats that once raced at hundreds per minute drop to only a few. Breathing becomes faint and rare, a quiet pulse of life that barely disturbs the air. Fat stores sustain them for months as their internal chemistry turns minimalist, burning just enough fuel to keep cells alive. On warm nights, they sometimes wake, shift position or rebuild the nest, then return to their trance of cold calm. By the time spring sunlight melts the frost, the small bodies stir, hearts quicken, and their sleepy eyes blink open. They step out as if the long winter never truly happened. Hibernating mammals recycle waste to nourish their own tissues. Inside a hibernating body, almost nothing is wasted. Fat provides energy, but the real miracle lies in how these animals handle nitrogen waste. In ordinary life, urea is excreted through urine, carrying nitrogen away. During hibernation, this would be lethal dehydration. Instead, the body reuses it. Specialized microbes in the gut break urea apart and feed its nitrogen back into the bloodstream, where it is used to build new proteins and repair tissues. Muscles remain strong, organs stay intact, and nothing toxic accumulates. Even the gut bacteria change roles to help recycle instead of digest. When the sleeper wakes, the system resets smoothly. Kidneys clear the final traces, and the animal steps out of its den in almost perfect balance. It has eaten nothing, yet lost little more than fat. The process is a natural model of efficiency that engineers and doctors still struggle to match. Bears maintain bone strength despite total inactivity. A bear can lie motionless for half a year, yet when it wakes, it stands on legs that are still strong. While human bones weaken rapidly in bed rest or spaceflight, bears preserve theirs through subtle control. The cells that dissolve bone slow almost to a stop, while those that rebuild continue at a gentle pace, maintaining perfect balance. Calcium moves in a closed loop between blood and bone, never lost. The marrow still produces new blood cells, and hormones adjust to keep minerals circulating without waste. Scientists believe this adaptation could one day help prevent osteoporosis in people confined to long recovery or weightlessness. To the bear, it is just survival. In silence and darkness, its body keeps renovating itself. The den hides not decay but maintenance, a kind of slow construction that carries strength through the stillness of winter. Time perception shifts as metabolism slows almost to zero. In deep torpor, time itself bends. Brain cells fire so rarely that seconds stretch, and the usual rhythm of experience dissolves. A day might pass with only a handful of heartbeats and a few shallow breaths. The brain's internal clocks drift into near stasis, and the dividing line between sleep and death becomes razor thin. Yet awareness is not erased, only muted. When the animal wakes, it senses the world as if from a long blink. For it, the dark months are not endured but skipped, folded into a single moment of stillness. Some researchers call it the closest natural form of suspended consciousness. Others see it as proof that biology can edit time, slowing it until life passes almost unseen. The world outside changes completely, but for the sleeper, the interval between falling asleep and waking again is a single heartbeat. Microbes in permafrost can awaken after thousands of frozen years, deep within ancient Arctic soil, microbes lie locked in permafrost, older than civilization. Yet when thawed carefully in laboratories, many of them awaken. They move, feed, and divide as if no time has passed at all. Their survival rests on biochemical tricks that protect DNA and proteins from freezing damage, and enzymes that repair molecules fractured by radiation and ice. Some have been revived from ice more than 30,000 years old. Their reawakening has changed how scientists think about life's endurance. It proves that metabolism can pause not for seasons, but for ages, waiting patiently for a return of warmth. If Earth can harbor living cells through millennia of ice, perhaps frozen moons and planets might do the same. In each drop of thawed permafrost lies a whisper from deep time, reminding us that life's truest strength is its refusal to vanish. Hibernation triggers a complete shift in blood chemistry. Before an animal slips into torpor, its blood begins to change. Sugars rise to protect cells from cold, salt levels adjust, and the balance of proteins shifts to prevent clotting or dehydration. Oxygen binds differently to hemoglobin, ensuring that even at a faint pulse, tissues still receive enough to survive. Fatty acids reorganize so that blood remains fluid when chilled, and the immune system quiets to avoid wasting energy. The result is a bloodstream redesigned for near stasis, a liquid environment that keeps organs alive at a fraction of normal function. When warmth returns, the chemistry reverses in precise order. The blood becomes active again, clotting resumes, and the heartbeat accelerates without shock. To call it adaptation is too simple. It is metamorphosis within a single body, a transformation so smooth it can repeat for decades without error. Frozen frogs flood their cells with sugar to stop ice from tearing tissue. As winter closes in, certain frogs perform one of nature's most astonishing feats. Their hearts stop beating, their lungs stop breathing, and ice forms inside their bodies. Yet they do not die. Before freezing, their livers release massive amounts of glucose and urea into the bloodstream. These chemicals act as antifreeze, pulling water out of vital cells and preventing sharp crystals from forming inside. Ice forms only in safe spaces between cells. For weeks or months, they remain frozen solid, their metabolism halted. When spring light warms the forest floor, the ice melts, the sugar thins, and their hearts begin to beat again. Within hours, the frogs hop away as if nothing happened. Their survival has inspired research into organ preservation and cryonics, but no human technology has yet equaled the precision of a frog that can die, thaw, and live again. Controlled torpor could revolutionize emergency care. When blood flow stops during trauma or cardiac arrest, cells begin to die within minutes. Hibernators point to another way. By slowing metabolism, reducing temperature, and cutting oxygen use, life can pause long enough for rescue. Scientists are testing ways to induce this torpor in humans through gentle cooling and chemical triggers that mimic natural signals. In trials with animals, the technique has protected brains and hearts through severe oxygen loss, buying precious time for recovery. Doctors imagine emergency rooms where critical patients are cooled within minutes, preserved in metabolic silence while damage is repaired. The idea once belonged to science fiction, but nature has proved it works. If it can be mastered safely, controlled torpor could change the limits of medicine itself, giving humans the same power that lets a ground squirrel sleep through an entire season unharmed. Group torpor can spread through colonies like a shared rhythm. In a winter cave filled with bats, sleep becomes contagious. As one individual slows its heartbeat and breath, the temperature drop ripples through the cluster. Soon hundreds hang motionless together, their combined body heat forming a pocket of air just warm enough to prevent freezing. Each tiny heart echoes the next, and the group falls into a collective rhythm that holds through the long, cold months. This synchronization conserves energy far better than solitude could. When the first warm currents of spring drift into the cave, the change passes through them again. One stirs, then another, and soon the whole colony wakes in waves, stretching wings and shaking frost. Group torpor is more than a coincidence. It is a social version of hibernation, proof that even in stillness, life can move together in unison. Nature rests, waits, and renews through this ancient cycle of pause. Every year, the planet exhales. Rivers slow, forests fall quiet, and animals disappear into secret refuges. What seems like death is preparation. Beneath snow and soil, the machinery of renewal hums softly. Nutrients settle, roots mend, and water gathers underground. The air clears, ecosystems reset, and balance returns. Then, as the tilt of the earth brings back the sun, the silence ends. Frozen ponds stir, soil warms, and an explosion of green and song follows. Hibernation is not an interruption of life, but part of its heartbeat, a universal rhythm that keeps chaos from burning the world out too quickly. Rest, wait, rise, repeat. The cycle is ancient and precise. The reason spring feels like resurrection instead of mere routine. Stillness is not the opposite of life. It is how life gathers strength to begin again. Echidnas drift in and out of torpor through the Australian winter. In the rocky hills and eucalyptus forests of southern Australia, echidnas survive the cold season through a rhythm that is neither full wakefulness nor true hibernation. They slip in and out of torpor, adjusting to the shifting weather. When the air turns icy, their body temperature falls close to the ground's, and their hearts slow until the pause between beats lasts many seconds. When sunlight returns for a few days, they stir, forage for ants, and then sink back into stillness as the chill deepens again. This pattern can last for months, creating a slow alternation between activity and rest that saves enormous energy while keeping them alert to opportunity. Sometimes, males even wake briefly to mate during warm spells before returning to sleep. The echidna's flexible cycle shows that survival does not always mean full surrender to the season, but can be a dance between movement and pause. Hibernators age more slowly than active animals of the same species. When the body's engine slows, time itself seems to hesitate. Hibernation reduces the stress that daily metabolism places on cells. Oxygen demand drops, harmful free radicals decline, and DNA repair systems have time to restore microscopic damage that accumulates with normal activity. Over a lifetime, this means fewer broken molecules, fewer errors, and longer preservation of function. Ground squirrels, bats, and other hibernators live noticeably longer than related species that remain active all year. Even their mitochondria, the power plants of cells, produce less waste heat and fewer damaging byproducts. Telomeres at the ends of chromosomes erode more slowly, delaying the biological clock of aging. The effect is not magic, only balance. Life extended by restraint. To sleep through hardship is to step outside the wear of constant effort, proving that sometimes the best way to preserve life is to live more slowly. Parasites within hosts can also enter torpor until conditions improve. Even the smallest dependents of hibernating animals follow the same rhythm of stillness. When a ground squirrel, bat, or bear enters torpor, its internal companions, from worms to microscopic protozoa, reduce their activity too. They slow reproduction, halt feeding, and wait for warmth and nutrients to return. If they did not, their hunger could harm or kill the host before spring arrived, destroying their own future in the process. Some parasites produce protective coatings that let them survive the chill, while others rely on the host's lowered body temperature to trigger their own suspended state. When the animal wakes, circulation restarts, and the parasites stir with it, resuming the ancient cycle of coexistence. It is an uneasy partnership, but an enduring one, shaped by shared dependence on patience. Even life that lives upon life knows when it is wiser to wait. Heart rhythm changes shape to cope with slower beats. When an animal's heart slows to a few beats each minute, it must completely reorganize its pattern to survive. In hibernators, electrical impulses stretch apart, and the muscle fibers contract in long, deliberate waves. Each heartbeat pumps more blood per stroke, compensating for the slower rhythm. Ion channels in the heart's cells shift to favor stability over speed, keeping each contraction smooth and reliable. Blood becomes slightly thicker, allowing it to flow gently without pooling or clotting. In some species, the shape of the heartbeat itself changes when measured on a monitor, flattening into soft curves that echo the stillness of sleep. When warmth returns, these same hearts accelerate effortlessly, resuming the fast tempo of active life. The transition is seamless. A system designed for movement learns how to rest, proving that even the heart can become fluent in quiet. Arctic fish make natural antifreeze to survive sub-zero seas. In the polar oceans, temperatures drop well below the freezing point of pure water, yet fish swim calmly through it. Their blood carries special proteins that attach to the smallest ice crystals and stop them from growing. This prevents freezing even when seawater turns to slush around them. These antifreeze proteins are an evolutionary masterpiece, fine-tuned over millions of years to work precisely at the edge of danger. The fish can hunt and reproduce in water that would kill most other species within minutes. Scientists have used similar molecules to protect frozen foods, preserve tissues, and even improve frost resistance in crops. But no artificial version matches the natural balance found in these fish, whose veins carry liquid life through liquid ice. In a world built from cold, they have rewritten the chemistry of survival. Hibernation research may unlock the secret of suspended animation. Every discovery about hibernation brings science closer to understanding how to pause life safely. In laboratories, researchers have cooled small mammals and triggered deep torpor using specific gas mixtures and metabolic signals. The animals awaken later unharmed, their organs preserved, their minds intact. The implications are vast. If humans could one day enter a controlled torpor, it could revolutionize medicine, allowing trauma patients to be stabilized for long transport or giving surgeons time to work with near-perfect precision. Astronauts might travel between planets while using only a fraction of the food and oxygen they would need awake. The challenge lies in restarting the body gently, warming tissues in exact sequence so that chemistry remains balanced. Nature has solved this problem countless times. We are only beginning to understand how. Some species wake briefly to eat cached food midwinter. Not every hibernator sleeps straight through the season. Chipmunks and certain mice live by a schedule of short, deliberate awakenings. Before winter, they store seeds, berries, and nuts in intricate chambers beneath the soil. When their bodies cool and slow, they sleep for days or weeks, then rise just long enough to eat and drink. These brief returns to wakefulness restore energy reserves and prevent starvation if conditions last longer than expected. They also help the animals check their hoards and remove mold or decay that could poison future meals. Each awakening is short, efficient, and essential. This pattern balances deep rest with vigilance, a careful compromise between torpor and alertness. Through this rhythm, the animals endure long winters that would otherwise drain them completely, proving that sleep can be strategic as well as restorative. Deep torpor suppresses cancer cell growth in some studies. In the stillness of hibernation, every process slows, including the harmful ones. Experiments on hibernating mammals show that tumors stop growing when metabolism merely halts. Cancer cells, deprived of energy and oxygen, fail to divide, while normal cells enter a protected state that resists damage. In laboratory models, researchers have replicated these conditions by cooling animals or using chemical signals that mimic torpor. The results are striking: reduced inflammation, slower tumor progression, and fewer mutations. The cold seems to give the body time to repair itself without interference. If these mechanisms can be adapted to human medicine, doctors may one day place patients into controlled torpor to halt disease temporarily. It is a bold vision, yet it mirrors what nature already proves each winter: that rest can be the most powerful form of defense. The scent of spring soil can trigger awakening. For animals buried beneath the ground, the first hint of spring is not sight or sound, but smell. As the frost softens, microbes awaken and release faint chemical signatures that drift through the soil. Hibernators sense these invisible changes through delicate receptors tuned to trace gases and organic compounds. The signal travels through the brain to the pineal gland, where it alters hormone levels and prepares the body for reawakening. The shift begins gradually. Heart rate rises, blood warms, and muscles regain tone. When the animal finally emerges, it is responding not to temperature alone, but to the scent of life returning. The fragrance of thawed earth, rich and subtle, serves as nature's quiet alarm clock, reminding every sleeper that the world above is ready again. Hibernation teaches that survival can mean stillness, not struggle. Every winter, millions of animals practice a lesson that life often forgets. Strength is not always motion. In the silence of hibernation, they conserve energy, slow their hearts, and wait for the world to heal itself around them. Their restraint maintains balance in ecosystems that depend on cycles of rest and renewal. When they wake, food and light have returned, and the landscape is ready for growth. Humans, too, might learn from this patience. To endure does not always mean to push harder. Sometimes survival is about trust, about holding still through hardship until the right moment to rise. The world continues while they sleep, yet their stillness shapes its rhythm. Hibernation is not escape, but harmony, a reminder that in the great design of life, even waiting has purpose. The porwheel is the only bird known to hibernate for months. High among the sun-bleached cliffs of North America, the common porwheel performs a feat no other bird can match. When insects vanish and nights grow cold, it settles into rock crevices and lets its body cool until it nearly matches the surrounding air. Its heart slows to just a few beats a minute, and breathing almost stops. For weeks, or even months, it remains still. Wings folded tight, feathers dusted with sand. When warmth returns, it wakes slowly, stretches its wings, and glides back into the dawn to hunt once again. Early naturalists once thought these birds had vanished during winter, but careful observation revealed that they had simply chosen to pause. Their discovery transformed what we knew about avian endurance. The porwheel's deep rest shows that flight and stillness can belong to the same creature, and that even a heart built for motion knows when to wait. Hibernation allows months of fasting without malnutrition. Most animals waste away without food, yet hibernators bypass this rule completely. Their bodies shift into a chemical state where every resource is recycled. Fat becomes the main fuel, but protein, vitamins, and minerals are conserved with extraordinary precision. Nitrogen that would normally be lost in waste is reclaimed and transformed into fresh amino acids. This closed-loop system prevents the muscle and organ damage that fasting usually causes. Bears, ground squirrels, and bats emerge from hibernation lean but strong, their tissues intact and their immune systems ready. Their metabolism acts like a perfectly balanced budget, spending nothing it cannot replace. Scientists study these mechanisms to understand how humans might one day preserve muscle and organ health during long hospital stays or space missions. Hibernation is not starvation, but mastery of energy itself. A seasonal suspension that proves survival is as much about management as endurance. Amphibians thaw gradually to avoid shock when the ice melts. When spring sunlight begins to reach the frozen ponds where frogs and salamanders have slept, their revival must unfold slowly. If they thawed too quickly, water rushing back into their cells could cause fatal ruptures. Instead, they wake through a delicate process controlled by chemistry. Sugars and alcohols stored in their tissues during freezing act as natural antifreeze and stabilizers. As the ice around them softens, blood flow resumes in a slow wave, carrying warmth to vital organs first. The heart beats unevenly at first, then finds its rhythm, and breathing begins again. Within hours, the once rigid bodies flex and push through slush toward the surface. The precision of this sequence allows survival after conditions that would destroy most living things. Each amphibian's awakening is a carefully tuned performance between cold and life, the conclusion of a frozen sleep that bends but never breaks biology. The gut microbiome transforms entirely while the host sleeps. Inside the hibernator's body, even the smallest ecosystems adapt to the season of silence. Gut bacteria that thrive on constant meals of plant matter cannot survive months without food, so they're replaced by species that feed on mucus and internal secretions. This altered community produces fewer digestive acids, but more compounds that prevent infection and maintain intestinal health. When spring returns, the balance shifts again. Food triggers the rebirth of microbes suited for digestion, rebuilding the internal landscape within days. This partnership between host and microbiome ensures survival for both sides. Without the microbial adjustment, digestion could collapse when feeding resumes. In recent years, scientists have begun to see how profoundly hibernation reshapes the invisible world within. The gut does not merely sleep. It reorganizes itself completely, a miniature season that mirrors the great pause occurring in the rest of the body. Antarctic midges use sugars to keep their bodies from freezing. The Antarctic midge is smaller than a grain of rice, yet endures one of the harshest climates on Earth. To survive, it replaces much of its body water with a concentrated syrup of sugars and alcohols that prevent ice from forming inside its cells. This mixture acts like biological antifreeze, lowering the freezing point and preserving cell membranes. For most of the year, the midge remains frozen solid within the soil, immobile but alive. When summer sunlight returns, the sugar concentration drops, water flows back, and movement resumes. Their survival depends entirely on timing. A few hours of unexpected warmth or cold at the wrong moment could destroy them. Despite their size, these insects demonstrate one of nature's most elegant survival strategies. They show that complex chemistry, not sheer strength, allows life to persist at the edge of absolute cold. Bears rouse gently every few weeks to stretch and adjust position. Deep in the den, hibernation is not pure stillness. Even when buried in snow, a bear stirs every few weeks. Its body temperature rises slightly, muscles flex, and the animal shifts position to improve circulation and prevent pressure injuries. Sometimes it will lick its paws, stretch its limbs, or change posture before sinking back into torpor. These short awakenings last only minutes but serve a crucial purpose. They maintain muscle tone and stimulate mild blood flow without breaking the deep rest that conserves energy. During these moments, the bear's breathing quickens, eyes flicker open, and a faint awareness returns, though it never fully wakes. The rhythm of these cycles keeps tissues alive through months of near immobility. It is a reminder that even in the deepest silence of winter, life maintains a quiet pulse, never entirely surrendering to sleep. Artificial hibernation might protect travelers from cosmic radiation. Beyond Earth's magnetic field, radiation travels unchecked, carrying energy that can break DNA and damage cells. Scientists believe that inducing torpor in astronauts could reduce these risks. In a slowed metabolic state, fewer cells divide, and repair processes have more time to catch errors before they spread. Cooling the body also reduces the amount of oxygen radicals that radiation typically amplifies. Space engineers imagine spacecraft where crew members alternate between short torpor cycles and waking intervals, synchronizing rest periods with known peaks of solar activity. In animal studies, artificially induced torpor has already shown protective effects against both radiation and inflammation. For long missions to Mars or beyond, this technique could become essential. The concept redefines survival in space, transforming travel from a test of constant endurance into a delicate partnership between biology and silence. Hibernating brains show patterns similar to deep meditation. When a mammal enters torpor, its brain activity does not vanish entirely, but shifts into slow, rhythmic patterns. Electrical waves become large and synchronized, resembling those recorded in humans during profound meditation or dreamless sleep. In this quiet state, regions linked to emotion and memory remain faintly active, while sensory areas go almost silent. The brain uses far less energy yet preserves its structure perfectly. When the animal wakes, there is no loss of learning or identity. Researchers studying these patterns believe hibernation could reveal new methods for protecting human brains after trauma or during surgery. The idea that deep focus and deep torpor share similar rhythms suggests that consciousness itself can adapt to extreme stillness. Within the silence of hibernation lies a living calm, a state that balances awareness and absence like a perfect pause between thoughts. Animals return to the same hibernation sites year after year. For many species, finding the right place to hibernate is a matter of life or death. Once they discover a site that offers safety and stable temperature, they return to it every year. Bears choose dens with specific slope angles to drain meltwater. Bats memorize the acoustic signatures of caves that hold the right humidity. Turtles and snakes find the same burrows using magnetic and chemical cues. These refuges become part of the animal's inherited geography, passed from generation to generation. In some mountain ranges, scientists have identified the same bear dens in use for centuries, their walls polished smooth by countless winters of quiet breathing. The consistency of these choices reveals how memory and environment intertwine. Hibernation is not only a biological process, but also an act of homecoming, a return to a remembered stillness that waits in the earth. Hibernation reveals how the body can pause time itself. When an organism slows its metabolism to near zero, the usual rules of biology bend. Cells that would die after hours of oxygen loss remain intact for months. Chemical reactions that age tissue almost stop. Heart and brain idle in unison, maintaining the spark of life without consuming its fuel. In this suspended balance, the body continues to exist outside normal time. When activity resumes, there is no sense of the days that have passed. Experiments with hibernating species suggest that every heartbeat saved, every molecule left unburned, adds to longevity. It is as if the body stores unused moments and spends them later. Hibernation turns survival into a form of timekeeping, showing that rest can be a kind of immortality. The clock of life does not always tick forward. Sometimes it learns to wait. Pygmy possums sleep beneath alpine snow until the first melt. High in the Australian Alps, these tiny marsupials vanish when blizzards arrive. They retreat into rock crevices and burrows, then slip into torpor so deep that their temperature nearly matches the ice packed above them. The snow is not an enemy, it is insulation. A thick blanket that traps still air and keeps the world beneath more stable than the brutal wind outside. Heartbeat and breathing slow to a whisper. Fat reserves carry them through weeks when nectar and insects are gone. On brief warm spells they may stir, groom frost from whiskers, and drink melt that trickles along stone, then drop again into silence. When spring finally softens the drifts, alpine flowers open within days, and the possums wake into sudden abundance. Their timing is exquisite. They rise exactly when nectar is richest and insect swarms begin, proving that survival here is not about strength, it is about patience coupled to perfect seasonal clocks. Certain bacteria hibernate inside salt crystals for geological ages. In ancient salt beds buried deep underground, tiny pockets of brine trap microbes that then become sealed within growing crystals. With almost no water movement and almost no nutrients, these cells reduce metabolism to near zero and persist for spans far longer than any animal lifetime. Protective sugars and proteins stabilize membranes and DNA, while salt itself acts as a preservative that blocks damaging enzymes. When scientists dissolve these crystals in sterile conditions, some cells revive and divide as if a long pause had ended. The lesson is remarkable. Dormancy can be written into minerals, not just into tissues. Its salt can shelter life across millennia. Similar refuges might exist on other worlds where evaporation once concentrated seas. These bacteria are not ghosts from the past. They are patient travelers carried forward by rocks, waiting for a single drop of water to complete the circle and restart their chemistry. Melatonin synchronizes hibernation with the shortening days. As daylight shrinks in late summer and autumn, eyes and deep brain sensors deliver a simple message to the pineal gland. Nights are growing longer. The pineal answers by releasing melatonin in extended nightly pulses. Those signals travel through the body, shifting appetite, changing how fat is stored, and prompting the conversion of white fat into brown fat that can ignite warm arousals in midwinter. In the brain, clock genes retune daily rhythms towards seasonal timing, so sleep, hormone release, and temperature all drift into a winter cadence. If artificial light delays that melatonin rise, entry into torpor can be disturbed or mistimed, which shows how finely tuned the system is to natural dusk and dawn. Melatonin is not a sleep drug in this context. It is a calendar written in darkness and light, a hormone that turns the sky into instructions, telling a body when to wait and when to wake. Induced hibernation has been achieved in laboratory mammals. Researchers have coaxed animals that do not naturally hibernate into torpor using carefully controlled cooling and targeted chemical cues. By adjusting ambient temperature and activating brain regions that govern energy use, they lower body temperature and slow heartbeat and breathing without injury. Oxygen demand falls, inflammation quiets, and organs tolerate periods that would normally cause damage. After set intervals, warmth and supportive care bring the animals back to full activity with memory and coordination intact. This is not folklore. It is a repeatable protocol that demonstrates how flexible mammalian physiology can be when guided gently. The implications reach far beyond the lab. If similar methods can be translated safely to larger animals and eventually to humans, surgeons could protect tissues during complex operations, and rescuers could stabilize trauma patients during QT. transport. The proof of principle exists already, a scientific doorway into deliberate, reversible stillness. Parasites mirror the seasonal rhythm of their hosts to survive. A winter den or burrow is an ecosystem, not a solitary refuge. Parasites that depend on sleeping hosts survive the season by matching the same seasonal signals. Ticks settle into fur and reduce metabolism, waiting for carbon dioxide and warmth to rise when the host stirs. Flea larvae in nest material. Slow development until vibration and humidity tell them a body has returned. Intestinal worms decrease feeding and reproduction to avoid exhausting a host that is not eating, then reactivate when fresh nutrients flow. Even microscopic protozoa enter cyst forms that tolerate low oxygen and low temperature. This synchronized pause protects both parties. A hungry parasite would harm a hibernator that cannot heal quickly, and a dying host would end the parasite's lineage. Alignment is the durable solution. When the sleeper wakes, the entire community wakes with it, each species stepping back into its role at exactly the right time. Weather cues can delay or hasten entry into torpor. Animals do not read calendars, they read air and earth. A sudden warm spell in late autumn can postpone torpor by a week, giving hibernators time to add a final layer of fat. An early bite of cold can trigger an accelerated shutdown, pushing bodies to begin energy-saving processes before food truly vanishes. Barometric pressure shifts, humidity changes, and wind patterns all provide microsignals that fine-tune the start of dormancy. In mountains, a first heavy snow can lock the switch, while in deserts, a dry front can cue estivation rather than cold sleep. The point is flexibility. The hormonal cascade that leads to torpor is primed by day length, then nudged by weather into the exact day and hour. Precision matters. Enter too early, and reserves run out before spring. Enter too late, and storms waste precious calories. Survival belongs to those who listen closely to the sky. Desert snails seal their shells to endure months without water. When heat turns soil to powder and plants retreat into thorn and bark, desert snails withdraw behind doors of their own making. They exude layers of dried mucus and calcium that harden into an epiphragm, a thin lid that seals moisture inside. Metabolism falls to a fraction of normal, heartbeats slow into long intervals, and oxygen demand nearly vanishes. The air outside may broil, yet the chamber within remains humid and cool compared to the sunlit stones. Some species can survive this way for many months, waking only when a rare storm taps the land with rain. At the first touch of moisture, they dissolve the seal, extend soft bodies into the wet air, and feed with urgency before heat returns. Their strategy is quiet perfection. They are living flasks that carry their own climate, proof that stillness and architecture can outlast even the longest drought. Bears emerge in spring with perfectly timed newborns. Inside a winter den, a mother has spent months in near silence, while tiny cubs nursed and grew. The moment she chooses to step into daylight is no accident. She rises when the snowpack softens enough to allow travel, but still carries her tracks. She rises when early vegetation begins to sprout and carrion becomes accessible, so rich milk can continue to flow without hunting at full strength. The cubs are no longer fragile. They can cling, crawl, and learn with every hour outdoors. This schedule is written into hormones long before winter starts. Implantation of embryos is delayed until the mother has enough fat to support gestation and early nursing, which ensures that birth aligns with the season that offers the best chance of survival. The family appears as if conjured by warmth, yet their timing is the product of careful accounting, carried out by a body that never stopped planning. Cryogenic preservation could bridge centuries between worlds. Hibernation shows that life can be slowed safely. Cryopreservation goes further, aiming to stop motion entirely by cooling tissues to deep cold, where chemistry nearly ceases. The problem is ice. Sharp crystals shred cells, unless protective agents shield water and guide freezing into safer forms, or prevent it altogether through vitrification, a glass-like state. Researchers have preserved embryos and small tissues in this way for years, then revived them intact. The dream is larger organs, then whole bodies, held long enough to cross distances or wait for cures. Lessons from frogs that survive freezing and fish that carry antifreeze proteins inform new cryoprotectant recipes and protocols. The ethical questions are immense, but the science is straightforward. If we can pause life without breaking it, time becomes a landscape we might cross. What hibernation whispers, cryonics tries to speak aloud. The smallest heartbeats on Earth belong to creatures asleep for survival. In deep torpor, hearts become metronomes set to the slowest possible tempo. A hummingbird that beats faster than any mammal in flight can drop to a faint pulse at night to save its life. A bat can hang for hours between breaths, heart ticking just enough to feed a cooling brain. Ground squirrels let minutes stretch between beats during midwinter, yet still deliver oxygen where it matters. This shrinkage of rhythm is not weakness. It is mastery of margin. By making each beat count, by pumping a fuller volume of blood with slower strokes, these animals hold tissues at the edge of silence without crossing it. When warmth returns, the metronome winds up again, and complex behavior resumes within minutes. The lesson is simple and profound. Survival is not only about how fast a heart can race, it is also about how gently it can wait. Arctic ground squirrels enter a near-frozen state once every few weeks. No other mammal comes closer to freezing and survives. In the tundra, the Arctic ground squirrel endures darkness and temperatures far below zero by surrendering to cold in deliberate cycles. Its body temperature drops below the freezing point of water, yet ice never forms inside its cells. Every few weeks it briefly awakens, raising its temperature through shivering to restore balance and flush waste from the blood before slipping back into stillness. During these cold phases, its heartbeat can fall to just a few beats per minute, and breathing nearly stops. Brain activity fades but never vanishes. This rhythm continues all winter, a pattern of controlled dying and returning that conserves energy like nothing else in the animal kingdom. When spring sunlight warms the soil, the squirrel wakes fully and resumes life as if months of near death had passed in a single dream. Hibernation may have inspired ancient myths of death and rebirth. Long before people understood biology, they noticed the way certain animals vanished with winter and reappeared when the world grew green again. To early eyes, it looked like death followed by resurrection. Snakes, bears, and frogs became symbols of cycles and renewal, woven into myths that echoed humanity's search for meaning in nature's pauses. Some cultures linked these creatures to gods of the underworld or the changing seasons, seeing hibernation as a miniature version of cosmic death and return. Archaeological evidence suggests that cave art and seasonal rituals may have honored this mystery. The reality behind the wonder is simple yet profound. A heartbeat slowed to near silence, a breath that waits for warmth, a life that folds itself inward and then blooms again. Hibernation gave the earliest storytellers proof that endings are not always final, and that within sleep, life quietly rehearses the art of beginning again. Rotifers dry out completely and revive when water returns. Microscopic rotifers live in ponds, moss, and soil, where drought can strike without warning. When their world dries, they release protective sugars, curl into tiny beads, and lose nearly all body water. their metabolism halts entirely. In this glass-like state, they can endure radiation, heat, and the passage of years. When moisture finally returns, they rehydrate, repair any damaged molecules, and begin moving again within hours. Experiments have revived rotifers from dried samples decades old, proving that their form of dormancy borders on immortality. This extreme survival strategy, called anhydrobiosis, relies on perfect molecular packing that keeps cell structures from collapsing during dehydration. Rotifers show that hibernation does not always require cold or even heartbeat. It can exist as pure stillness, a moment when life steps outside time, waiting only for a drop of water to remind it what movement feels like. Specialized proteins protect cells from cold-induced damage. When temperatures plunge, ice crystals become deadly knives that slice through cell membranes. Many hibernators have evolved special proteins that prevent this. These antifreeze or heat shock proteins attach to ice as it begins to form, halting its spread. Others stabilize enzymes and keep them from folding incorrectly under stress. In frogs, insects, and fish, these molecules form a molecular armor that allows tissues to cool to near freezing without rupture. Scientists have isolated similar compounds in Arctic and Antarctic species and use them to preserve organs for transplant or improve frost resistance in crops. Inside the body, they work silently, holding delicate shapes together through the long sleep of winter. It is a biochemical ballet of stability in a world that should shatter. The beauty lies in simplicity. Molecules teaching matter to stay calm until warmth returns. Pollination cycles depend on the precise timing of spring awakening. When animals emerge from hibernation, their timing must align with the revival of plants and insects. Bees, bats, and birds that sleep through winter wake, in tune with the bloom of early flowers. This synchronization is so precise that even a shift of a few days can disturb ecosystems. If spring arrives too early or too late, pollinators may find empty air where blossoms should be, and flowers may open to a silent world. Many species use cues like soil warmth, day length, and scent changes in vegetation to time their awakening. The coordination is a symphony rehearsed by evolution for millions of years. Hibernation is not only about individual survival, it shapes the renewal of forests, fields, and entire food webs. Each sleeper that wakes at the right moment becomes part of a grander rhythm that feeds the planet's returning light. Brown fat acts as an internal furnace when animals begin to wake. Hidden between muscles and around vital organs, brown adipose tissue serves as a natural heater. Unlike ordinary fat that stores energy, brown fat burns it directly into warmth. Its mitochondria contain a unique protein that lets chemical energy escape as heat rather than motion. As a hibernator begins to stir, hormones ignite this tissue, flooding the bloodstream with warmth that radiates to the heart and brain first. Within minutes, the temperature inside rises, breathing quickens, and the body crosses the boundary between sleep and wakefulness. Human infants also rely on brown fat to stay warm before they can shiver. In hibernators, this furnace means survival, a spark hidden in the core that never fully goes out. It is the first sign of life's return, proof that awakening begins not with thought, but with fire rekindled deep within the flesh. Cryogenic technology could one day extend human lifespan. Hibernation teaches that life can be slowed safely, and cryogenics aims to extend that lesson beyond nature. By cooling tissues to extreme cold under protective conditions, scientists hope to preserve organs, embryos, and perhaps one day, whole bodies for future revival. The challenge is avoiding ice formation that tears delicate structures apart. Lessons from frogs, fish, and insects that survive freezing have inspired new cryoprotective chemicals that keep water molecules stable in glass-like states. Already, researchers store human organs and blood for months using refined freezing techniques, and experiments in molecular preservation are advancing rapidly. The vision is breathtaking: to pause biological decay and restart life without loss. It remains a frontier filled with both promise and ethical debate. But every step forward echoes the oldest winter strategy on Earth: the art of waiting for a warmer dawn. Nematodes in Antarctic ice can revive after half a century. In the frozen soils of Antarctica, microscopic worms have been discovered that awoke after more than 50 years encased in ice. During that time, their metabolism was effectively non-existent. Protective sugars and proteins preserved their cells while the surrounding permafrost locked them in stillness. When researchers thawed the samples and provided moisture, the worms began to move and feed again, as though no time had passed. Genetic analysis suggests they adapted over millennia to cycles of freezing and thawing, turning dormancy into a survival guarantee. These nematodes blur the line between life and suspension, proving that the boundary of endurance stretches far beyond what was once thought possible. Their revival is not only a marvel of biology, but a reminder that frozen landscapes are not lifeless. They are vaults of sleeping potential, waiting patiently beneath the ice. The body of a hibernator can cool to near ambient temperature safely. When an animal enters deep torpor, its internal thermostat loosens. Instead of fighting to maintain warmth, its body temperature drifts close to the environment. A ground squirrel may cool to just above freezing, while a bat in a cave can match the chill of surrounding stone. This alignment saves enormous energy, but requires molecular precision to prevent harm. Enzymes that control metabolism adapt to function at low temperatures, and membranes remain flexible despite the cold. Blood circulation slows to a crawl but never stops completely, allowing oxygen to reach vital organs. As conditions improve, small bursts of warmth from brown fat or shivering gently lift temperature again. The animal moves effortlessly between stillness and life. The lesson is elegant simplicity. Survival comes not from resisting the environment, but from becoming part of it until the world turns kind once more. The line between hibernation and estivation is often blurred. Hibernation protects against cold, while estivation guards against heat and drought. Yet the two share the same philosophy: conservation through stillness. Frogs, snails, and insects in deserts enter dry sleep during the scorching months, sealing moisture within their bodies and slowing metabolism almost to nothing. In some species, the same individual can perform both, depending on the season, sleeping through winter's chill or summer's burn with equal grace. The underlying biochemistry is strikingly similar. Energy stores shift, cellular repair increases, and stress responses heighten just before entry. In a changing climate, these twin strategies may overlap more often, creating flexible survival systems that let life persist wherever extremes collide. Whether beneath snow or sand, the idea remains the same. To endure, sometimes one must disappear for a while, waiting for the world to balance itself again. Killifish embryos pause growth until the rains refill their pools. In the fleeting puddles of African savannas, annual killifish race against time. Their pools appear after rain, teem with life, and vanish again under the dry sun. The adults live fast, maturing, breeding, and dying within weeks. Their embryos, however, perform a miracle of patience. As the water evaporates, the developing fish halt in mid-growth, locking their cells in suspended animation. They can remain dormant in hardened mud for months or even years, completely motionless but perfectly preserved. When rain finally returns, the eggs sense moisture and awaken, completing development and hatching within days. Scientists studying their biology have found that genes controlling metabolism, DNA repair, and stress response all switch into hibernation-like states. Killifish embryos are among the few vertebrates that can effectively stop time, transforming drought into a passageway between generations. They remind us that survival is not only about endurance, but about knowing when to pause. Hibernation could guide new medical treatments for long surgeries. In hospitals, the challenge of long operations is protecting organs while blood flow or oxygen supply is limited. Nature already solved this in hibernators, whose tissues endure months of near stillness without damage. Scientists studying ground squirrels and bears have discovered molecular pathways that suppress inflammation, reduce oxygen demand, and prevent cell death. By mimicking these processes, doctors hope to create hibernation medicine, temporarily slowing metabolism to shield patients during trauma or complex surgery. Cooling techniques already used in cardiac and brain procedures are early steps toward this goal. The dream is to induce controlled torpor safely in humans, giving surgeons more time to repair injuries without harming delicate tissues. If perfected, it could revolutionize emergency care, space travel, and critical medicine alike. Hibernation is not just an animal curiosity. It may be the next great frontier of human healing. Early humans may have practiced shallow hibernation during ice ages. Evidence from prehistoric skeletons found in caves hints that early humans might have entered low metabolic states during harsh winters. Bones show seasonal growth interruptions similar to those seen in hibernating mammals. Archaeological sites reveal dense habitation patterns in cold caves where fires alone could not sustain warmth. Anthropologists propose that early hominins may have reduced activity and body temperature for weeks or months, relying on stored fat and communal heat. This would have allowed survival through long periods of scarcity without constant food intake. The idea, though still debated, suggests that our ancestors shared a latent ability that modern humans may have lost. If true, hibernation could lie dormant within our biology, a relic of ancient adaptation to glacial hardship. Understanding this could one day unlock methods to slow metabolism or protect the body from extreme conditions, echoing an ability once written in our bones. Long torpor phases protect organs from oxygen loss. When an animal enters torpor, oxygen use falls to a fraction of normal levels. Blood flow slows dramatically, yet organs do not decay. This is because cells in hibernating bodies switch to survival metabolism, relying on chemical pathways that prevent the buildup of harmful byproducts. Proteins stabilize membranes, antioxidant systems intensify, and waste recycling increases efficiency. Studies on hibernating hamsters, bats, and bears show that their hearts and brains remain unscarred despite conditions that would normally cause damage. For humans, such control could transform medicine for heart attacks, strokes, or transplants, where tissues often suffer from interrupted circulation. By learning how hibernators maintain vitality without oxygen, doctors may one day extend survival windows in critical care. Nature's blueprint for resilience is already here, written in the quiet rhythm of slowed breath and sleeping cells that refuse to die. Bears appear in folklore as symbols of renewal after winter sleep. Across cultures, the re-emergence of the bear from its den has long symbolized the return of life. In Norse legend, bears were sacred to the goddess of fertility and spring. Native American traditions often depict the bear as a teacher of healing and endurance. In Japan, its waking marks good fortune for harvests. These myths arise from awe at an animal that seems to die each winter only to rise again, leaner yet alive. The biological truth deepens the myth. Bears do not truly sleep, but enter controlled torpor, balancing energy and life through months of stillness. When they emerge, they are proof that survival can mean surrender as much as struggle. Their rhythm mirrors the cycle of nature itself, where endings are never final, but preludes to renewal, and the quiet of winter is only the breath before awakening. Communal hibernation dens create stable microclimates underground. In cold regions, some animals survive winter by gathering together in shared refuges. Ground squirrels, snakes, and bats form colonies in burrows, caves, or crevices where temperatures remain steady and moisture is balanced. The combined body heat of dozens or hundreds of creatures maintains an environment just above freezing, even when air outside falls far below. The walls absorb and release heat slowly, acting as natural insulation. Inside, the air moves minimally, keeping oxygen levels sufficient but preventing energy loss. These communal dens, known as hibernacula, are small ecosystems of cooperation. Microbes recycle waste, and predators are deterred by sheer numbers. When spring arrives, the mass stirring of life fills the underground chamber with motion and warmth. It is one of nature's quietest yet most profound forms of collaboration. Survival through shared stillness. Lower body temperature could protect human tissues from trauma. When the body cools, every chemical process slows, including those that cause cellular injury. Modern medicine uses this principle in therapeutic hypothermia, where cooling patients after cardiac arrest or severe trauma reduces brain and organ damage. The science behind it mirrors hibernation. As temperature drops, neurons release fewer excitatory signals, inflammation decreases, and blood vessels tighten just enough to preserve oxygen. If researchers can learn to trigger deeper metabolic suppression safely, it could offer new ways to protect patients during surgeries, accidents, or even long-distance spaceflight. The body's own enzymes and hormones may hold the key to controlling this process. What animals achieve through evolution, humans may one day master through design, learning to buy time not with speed, but with the careful art of slowing down. Animals use stored fat as both fuel and internal insulation. Fat is not only an energy reserve, it is also a blanket and a shield. Before hibernation, animals gorge themselves to store enough calories to endure months without food. This fat accumulates in layers beneath the skin and around organs, acting as both insulation against the cold and as a steady energy supply. As metabolism drops, fat slowly converts into water and heat, maintaining balance within the body. In bears and ground squirrels, special enzymes regulate how fast this process unfolds, preventing starvation or overheating. Some animals even adjust the composition of their fat, increasing unsaturated lipids that stay fluid in low temperatures. To them, fat is more than fuel. It is a living resource, a carefully engineered buffer between survival and loss. Amphibians sense snowmelt through vibrations in the soil. As spring approaches, the frozen ground begins to move, releasing faint tremors from melting water and shifting ice. Frogs and salamanders buried deep in mud can feel these changes through their bodies long before the first warm breeze reaches them. Sensitive nerve endings in their skin and bones respond to vibrations and subtle shifts in pressure, signaling that the world above is softening. These cues trigger hormonal changes that wake metabolism and prepare muscles for movement. By the time poms thaw, they are ready to surface and breed, perfectly aligned with the season's rhythm. This sensory link between body and earth ensures that life returns exactly when it should. Even in sleep, these creatures listen to the world's slow heartbeat beneath the snow. Even the briefest hibernation can reset a stressed body. Not all torpor lasts months. Some animals, like hummingbirds and certain mice, enter short daily hibernation cycles that last only hours. These microrests dramatically lower metabolism, allowing cells to clear waste and repair damage. In experiments, even brief induced torpor in mammals improved recovery from stress and inflammation. The body, given permission to pause, restores itself at levels deeper than normal sleep. This discovery could hold promise for humans. Controlled metabolic pauses might one day be used to heal trauma, extend lifespan, or stabilize astronauts on long missions. The principle remains the same across scales. Whether a night or a season, stillness is medicine, and hibernation is nature's purest form of renewal. Brine shrimp embryos can remain dormant for decades. In the salt flats, where water vanishes for years at a time, brine shrimp have mastered the art of suspended life. When their shallow pools dry out, females produce cysts that seal developing embryos inside protective shells. These microscopic spheres lose nearly all moisture, replacing it with sugars that stabilize cell membranes and DNA. Metabolism slows to levels so low that it becomes undetectable. In this state, they can endure radiation, heat, freezing, and the passage of half a century or more. When moisture returns, the cysts rehydrate, metabolism restarts, and healthy shrimp hatch as though no time has passed. Laboratory tests have revived cysts stored for decades, proving that life can step outside of time and return unscathed. Each awakening is an ancient rebirth, a lesson in endurance written by evolution into one of the smallest bodies on Earth. Evolution may have shaped hibernation to handle famine, not frost. Long before mammals faced icy winters, early species struggled through long seasons without food. Fossil evidence and comparative studies suggest that hibernation began as a defense against famine, allowing animals to reduce energy use and survive months of scarcity. The first hibernators likely lived in warm regions where drought, not cold, made survival difficult. Lowering metabolism meant they could wait for rain or migration seasons to return resources. When the planet later cooled, the same mechanism adapted easily to winter. Many modern species still hibernate in response to hunger rather than temperature. This origin story changes how we see dormancy. It was not built for snow but for emptiness. Hibernation is a design for endurance, a system that teaches that survival begins when the body learns how to need less. Frost simply added a new challenge to an ancient solution. Deep hibernation could help humans survive interplanetary travel. Crossing space takes time measured in years, not days, and constant wakefulness would demand impossible amounts of food and air. Scientists studying hibernation think the solution may be to borrow nature's trick. By cooling the body and slowing metabolism, astronauts could enter a state of controlled dormancy, using only a fraction of their usual resources. Tests in animals show that organs can function safely under deep torpor, and damage from radiation may even decrease when cells are less active. Future spacecraft might include torpor chambers that monitor heart rate, temperature, and oxygen automatically, waking crew members for short intervals before returning them to rest. This would reduce the psychological strain of confinement and turn long voyages into manageable cycles of sleep. Humanity's first journey beyond Mars may begin not with motion, but with stillness. Hibernation might reveal ways to extend human lifespan. In hibernating species, aging slows dramatically. DNA repair improves, inflammation quiets, and oxidative stress nearly disappears. Their organs rest, preserving youth while activity ceases. When compared to related species that remain awake year-round, hibernators often live longer, healthier lives. Scientists studying these effects have found genes and enzymes that activate during torpor, many of which also regulate aging in humans. These include proteins that control stress resistance, metabolism, and cell recycling. By learning to mimic the conditions of hibernation without freezing, medicine may one day achieve what animals discovered long ago, that rest can stretch the boundaries of life. Slowing the body gives it time to repair itself at every level. The idea that deep stillness can protect vitality may prove to be the most natural form of longevity science we have yet imagined. Life in the frozen dark proves that stillness can be strength. Beneath glaciers, inside ancient ice, and in the darkest corners of the polar seas, life endures in forms that appear motionless, but are anything but dead. Microbes trapped in ice thousands of years old remain viable, dividing so slowly that one generation may span centuries. Enzymes continue their work at a whisper, maintaining structure and balance against the crushing cold. This existence is not weak, it is efficient beyond comprehension. By nearly stopping, these organisms waste nothing. They persist where energy is almost absent, outlasting faster species that burn themselves out. When conditions improve, they resume life instantly, as though no time has passed. Their frozen patience shows that survival is not always a contest of power. Sometimes it is a lesson in restraint, a reminder that endurance often belongs to those who know when to wait. Microbial dormancy keeps ancient genes alive beneath the ice. In permafrost that has not thawed since the last ice age, scientists have revived microbes that slept for tens of thousands of years. Their DNA remained intact through millennia of darkness and cold. These organisms persisted by slowing every reaction to a near halt, consuming trace minerals and repairing themselves molecule by molecule. When thawed, they awaken, divide, and begin their ancient routines, as if centuries had been hours. Some carry genetic material unlike anything found in modern life, offering clues to Earth's early evolution. Their existence is a biological time capsule, preserving the genetic memory of worlds long gone. Each revival demonstrates how dormancy can protect not just life, but history itself. The ice is not a grave, but a library, and each microbe is a page in the planet's oldest story. Space agencies plan to test human torpor chambers for long missions. As exploration moves toward Mars and beyond, engineers and biologists are collaborating to build torpor systems that safely induce human hibernation. These chambers gently cool the body, administer metabolic regulators, and monitor every heartbeat and breath. In a state of slowed metabolism, astronauts would require less oxygen and food, reducing both cost and cargo. They would also be better shielded from radiation and the psychological stress of confinement. Trials with animals have already shown that the body can safely endure and recover from prolonged low-temperature states. The next step is adapting those methods for human physiology while ensuring reversible transitions between rest and wakefulness. This technology could mark a new era in exploration, one where the longest journeys rely not on constant activity, but on carefully managed calm. The quiet metabolism of winter life echoes across every ecosystem. When winter grips the land, the world appears still, yet every forest, stream, and field remains alive beneath the silence. Trees slow their respiration, roots share nutrients through fungal networks, and insects linger in soil chambers awaiting warmth. In ponds, fish rest near the bottom, where temperatures remain stable. Even microbes adjust their chemistry to continue working at a fraction of normal speed. This synchronized slowing prevents collapse. Energy is conserved, waste is minimized, and life endures until the cycle restarts. Winter's quiet is a form of balance, a natural agreement that ensures survival through cooperation rather than competition. When the thaw comes, every organism wakes in harmony, guided by rhythms that have shaped the planet for millions of years. Sleep, stasis, and survival merge into one perfect equation of rest. Across the tree of life, from mammals to insects, rest follows a mathematical pattern of renewal. Sleep repairs the mind, torpor preserves the body, and hibernation safeguards the whole. Each level deepens the pause, reducing energy costs while maximizing recovery. Together they form nature's complete system of endurance. Even organisms without brains display similar rhythms, entering cycles of dormancy to protect themselves from stress. The boundaries between these states are not rigid but fluid, part of a universal strategy that unites all living things. The principle is simple. Nothing survives by motion alone. Every heartbeat, every breath, and every lifespan depends on balance between activity and stillness. In this equation, rest is not weakness. It is design. Even in the deepest stillness, life endures quietly through hibernation. Inside the frozen body of a hibernator, life continues with the faintest of movements. Cells maintain just enough activity to keep their structure intact. Chemical signals drift slowly through tissues, preserving the blueprint of function. From the outside, the animal seems gone, but within, a delicate orchestra of molecules keeps time with the world's slow pulse. When warmth returns, the body responds as if waking from a brief nap, memory intact and systems restored. Hibernation is not an escape from life, but a continuation of it under different rules. It reveals that existence does not depend on speed or noise, but on the quiet persistence of form. Stillness, when perfectly balanced, becomes the purest expression of survival. Hibernation could save lives during medical emergencies when oxygen runs low. When a patient suffers cardiac arrest or severe trauma, the greatest danger often comes not from the initial injury, but from oxygen deprivation that follows. Cells starved of oxygen begin to die within minutes, setting off a chain of damage that spreads through tissues. Hibernating animals, however, endure months with minimal oxygen flow and awaken unharmed. Their secret lies in how they slow metabolism so thoroughly that cells require almost no oxygen at all. They also produce protective proteins that prevent swelling, inflammation, and toxic buildup during low oxygen states. Medical researchers are studying these adaptations to develop therapies that could temporarily induce human tissues into a similar state. Cooling the body and administering metabolic regulators might one day allow doctors to stabilize patients during heart failure, organ transport, or battlefield injuries. The principle is simple but revolutionary. Life does not always need constant oxygen. It only needs balance long enough to recover. Frozen frogs demonstrate a natural blueprint for cryonics. In the forests of North America, wood frogs survive winter by freezing solid. Ice forms throughout their bodies, their hearts stop, and their blood no longer flows. Yet they do not die. Before freezing, they flood their cells with glucose and urea, creating natural antifreeze that prevents internal ice crystals from piercing membranes. Oxygen use falls to zero, and metabolism halts until spring. When the fall arrives, the ice melts first in their blood, jump-starting circulation and awakening organs in perfect order. Within minutes, they hop away, as if nothing happened. This ability has become a model for cryonics, the science of freezing and reviving biological tissue without damage. Understanding how these frogs control freezing and thawing could help scientists preserve human organs, extend lifespan, and maybe one day enable suspended animation. The frog's humble hibernation holds clues to technologies once imagined only in science fiction. Bears recycle nitrogen from waste to build new tissue. During months of hibernation, bears neither eat nor drink, yet their bodies do not waste away. Instead, they perform a chemical miracle. As proteins break down, nitrogen would normally leave the body as waste. But in a hibernating bear, gut microbes and liver enzymes capture that nitrogen and recycle it into amino acids, the building blocks of new protein. This process maintains muscle mass and repairs tissues, even in complete fasting. Bones remain strong, kidneys stay clean, and muscles lose almost no tone. Humans confined to bed for weeks would experience severe weakness and atrophy, but bears emerge ready to walk and hunt within hours. Scientists hope to replicate this cycle in medicine to prevent muscle loss in patients and astronauts during long periods of inactivity. The bear's winter fasting reveals that waste itself can become nourishment when biology learns to loop energy perfectly. Some animals awaken midwinter to mate in the snow. For many species, hibernation does not mean absolute sleep. Some wake briefly during the coldest months to fulfill vital tasks. Small mammals such as hedgehogs, marmots, and ground squirrels sometimes rouse from torpor to feed, clean, or even breed before sinking back into slumber. Certain frogs and salamanders emerge under frozen skies to lay eggs in icy ponds that thaw just enough to hold water. These awakenings are finely timed by hormones, temperature changes, and lunar cycles. By reproducing midwinter, the offspring hatch precisely when food becomes abundant in early spring. It is a delicate balance between risk and reward, but it ensures survival in competitive ecosystems. Each brief awakening reminds us that even in the deepest sleep, life listens for opportunity. Hibernation is not a single stretch of stillness, but a living rhythm that makes room for love and renewal amid the snow. Hibernation has its own heartbeat, unlike any waking rhythm. When animals enter deep hibernation, their hearts do not simply slow, they change shape and rhythm entirely. Electrical activity shifts to long pauses between beats, sometimes with several seconds of silence between contractions. In bears, the heart may fall from 50 beats per minute to fewer than 10, yet circulation remains stable. Specialized proteins in the heart muscle maintain strength and prevent clotting even when blood moves sluggishly. In smaller mammals, the heart can nearly stop, starting again only when triggered by temperature fluctuations or chemical signals. This flexibility protects vital organs from damage and preserves energy in ways human physiology cannot yet match. Studying these cardiac rhythms may help doctors design treatments for heart failure or hypothermia, revealing how the body can adapt to extreme calm without collapse. Hibernation's heartbeat is more than a rhythm. It is a biological language of control and grace. Each reawakening renews ecosystems with returning movement and sound. When spring sunlight softens the frost, hibernators stir beneath soil, ice, and bark. Their return is not only biological but ecological. As they emerge, bears scatter seeds through their droppings, bees begin pollinating, and frogs feed on insects that might otherwise overrun the land. The thaw's first rustles and songs mark the restart of food webs paused for months. Even microorganisms awaken in rhythm, decomposing organic matter that fuels new growth. Each awakening triggers another, rippling outward until the forest hums again with motion and sound. The world's silence transforms into music, every chirp and flutter a note in the symphony of renewal. Hibernation does not end in isolation. It ends in coordination. The sleepers rise, the systems breathe, and the planet turns once more toward abundance. Hibernation creates the pulse behind spring's sudden abundance. Spring appears sudden to human eyes, a burst of green and noise after long silence. Yet beneath that spectacle lies months of preparation. Dormant animals store nutrients that feed young plants through waste and decomposition. When they awaken, they aerate soil, disperse pollen, and balance populations by predation and foraging. The collective effect is a wave of productivity that moves northward with the sun. Without hibernation, much of this synchrony would collapse. The pause of winter creates the pressure that releases spring's explosion of life. It is not just weather that drives the season's bloom, but biology's rhythm of restraint and release. The stillness of winter becomes the heartbeat that powers growth, making abundance possible through the patience of the world's longest sleep. The physics of hibernation hints at new frontiers for human endurance. In physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Hibernation demonstrates this principle inside living systems. By lowering temperature and slowing metabolism, animals reduce the rate of entropy, the gradual disorder that defines aging and decay. Their cells remain ordered with minimal input, maintaining function at astonishing efficiency. Scientists studying these states see parallels with thermodynamic laws and quantum stability, suggesting that life's endurance might follow physical rules as much as biological ones. If humans could control metabolic rate and temperature safely, long-term survival in extreme environments could become possible, from deep space to polar expeditions. The bridge between biology and physics may be built in the mathematics of hibernation, where heat, energy, and time balance so precisely, but life nearly stops, yet never fades. Deep sleep across the cosmos may be nature's oldest survival code. Everywhere life exists, from oceans to tundra to imagined alien worlds, it must face cycles of scarcity and stress. Hibernation, or something like it, may be universal. It is the simplest possible answer to the hardest question: how can life endure when conditions turn against it? On Earth, it appears in mammals, insects, bacteria, and plants. On distant planets, it could be the same. A frozen world might cradle organisms that sleep for centuries between brief thaws. Even stars have cycles of dormancy, cooling and reawakening in their own cosmic rhythm. Hibernation reflects the universe's deepest truth, that rest and renewal are woven into existence itself. Life's oldest code is not struggle or speed, but the quiet logic of waiting for the next dawn. In every season of silence, life remembers how to begin again. When the world stills under snow or drought, it is easy to mistake quiet for emptiness. Yet within every seed, cocoon, and burrow lies memory, written in chemistry and pattern. That memory guides reawakening when warmth, light, or rain returns. It is why flowers bloom in perfect order, and why animals emerge just when food appears. Hibernation is not forgetfulness, it is memory preserved through patience. The pause between seasons holds the instructions for life's return. Even in the longest winters, the planet keeps its promise to renew. Each beginning is rehearsed in stillness first, a lesson that silence is not the opposite of life, but its preparation. When the sleepers rise and the first green breaks the frost, the world remembers itself exactly as it was meant to. Life persists in silence beneath snow, ice, and soil. Winter looks empty from above, but the pause is an illusion. Seeds lie ready with protective coats, responding to faint cues of moisture and temperature that mark the true end of cold. Invertebrates shelter in tree bark and leaf litter, insulated by air pockets that keep temperatures stable when winds roar. Microbes continue low-level chemistry inside films of unfrozen water that cling to soil grains. Even in permafrost, cells remain intact, their enzymes idle but not ruined. The collective effect is a hidden economy that banks energy for spring. Nutrients remain in place rather than washing away. Predators pause their demands, and prey avoid overuse of scarce resources. When the melt comes, the system reactivates with orderly timing. Flowers open as pollinators wake, Amphibians rise from ponds right as insect larvae appear, and food webs knit themselves back together in a matter of days. The quiet rhythm of hibernation shapes the pulse of the planet. Hibernation is more than an animal strategy. It is a planetary rhythm woven through the cycles of energy and life. When vast numbers of creatures slow their metabolism, ecosystems also slow. Food chains pause, soil microbes shift gears, and resources accumulate for the next awakening. Winter is not a dead season, but a time of accounting, when energy is stored rather than spent. The hush of hibernation keeps balance in forests, oceans, and tundra. Without it, prey would vanish, predators would starve, and the natural calendar would collapse. The stillness of countless sleeping bodies maintains the pulse of the biosphere itself. When spring returns, that stored energy erupts back into motion, fueling migration, breeding, and renewal. It is a reminder that rest is not absence but preparation, a collective breath that keeps the living world in tune with the turning of the earth. As the long winter fades and the sleepers begin to stir, the story of hibernation becomes the story of renewal itself. Beneath the quiet, life never stopped it, only waited, gathering strength in stillness until the world was ready to move again. Every heartbeat slowed through the cold finds its rhythm once more in spring, and every creature that wakes carries proof, but even the deepest silence holds life within it. Perhaps that is the real lesson of hibernation. Rest is not the end of motion, but part of it. The pause allows energy to return, the same way the hush before dawn prepares the air for birdsong. It reminds us that slowing down is not defeat. It is a form of wisdom written into the bones of the world. So tonight, as you drift toward your own quiet rest, let your breathing fall into the rhythm of the earth itself. The stillness that holds the forests and the mountains holds you too. Let the noise of the day fall away. Let your thoughts cool like the winter soil waiting for its thaw. Somewhere, even now, tiny hearts are waking beneath the snow. And somewhere deep inside you, life is waiting to begin again in its own time. Good night.